been done long ago. What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How can you run when you know?
That song right there, ranked as one of the top 10 protest songs of all time. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, song called Ohio, released in 1971. But it was on this date in 1968, July the 3rd, almost 60 years ago, that Crosby, Stills and Nash first played together. It was during an impromptu get-together at Joni Mitchell's place, because why wouldn't David Crosby, Stephen Stills, and Graham Nash kind of jam while at Joni Mitchell's place? How is that for a little slice of music history? Yeah, we were hanging out at Joni Mitchell's place, David, Stephen, and I, says Graham Nash, and we jammed a little bit. Next thing you knew, we became Crosby, Stills, and Nash. We added that Neil Young fella who participated in that song, Ohio, released in 1971. But it never would have happened had Crosby, Stills, and Nash not jammed at Joni Mitchell's place on this day in 1968, ultimately forming the trio that we know and love today. This day is Thursday, the 3rd of July, 2025. Welcome to the program. Give yourself a pat on the back if you have not already. The Farwell Show bump came through again last week. You brought up the issue. We talked about it on the show. What the heck with the what and heckin' with these new garbage carts that we're all going to get when we go to this automated collection system next spring, right? The region said to us in June and July, you would get the chance to make your cart selection, because if you didn't make a selection, you were automatically by default getting the larger cart. And several of you reached out and said, we can't find the place to make our selection. We don't want the big cart. We want to choose. We want the freedom of choice. And so we found out as July approached last week that the cart selection tool wasn't even ready yet. I think the region forgot to tell us about that little part. But wouldn't you know that the moment you bring it up for discussion on this show, boom, bada bing, bada boom. Within days, the cart selection tool is ready. You've got more time to make your choice. Give yourself the rest of the summer. It's been in the news. Give yourself a pat on the back for making something happen. You caused the action because you wanted to know. And now you can make sure you get that smaller cart if indeed you want the smaller cart. By the way, if you were wondering how well the Call of Duty tournament went at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium this weekend, I have the inside scoop from Insider Gaming, but I'm most curious as to what Insider Gaming believes to be the surrounding area of the city of Kitchener. It's not my definition of surrounding area, but I'll share that with you after our Farwell Show 5 this morning.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Let's begin at number 1, and we are building in Wellesley, where a development on Gerber Road will see more than 160 homes created.
This subdivision will be very accessible for the people who live there to the amenities in the community, and they will also provide for a new market. They'll provide business to your existing commercial area in downtown Wellesley and see a lot of activity at your sportsplex, and there'll be people walking by on the community trail. And in our view, the lands represent a logical rounding out of the village of Wellesley.
Plans for the 25-acre property have been in the works since 2015. After unanimous approval at Wellesley Council, construction could start next year. Number 2, we are not building in Kitchener on a parcel of land on King Street near Limerick Drive and the 401. Despite a staff recommendation to approve the proposal for 2 tall towers on the site, Kitchener City Council rejected the plan. The developer went to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but has since dropped that appeal, meaning nothing will be built on the site for now. And that is music to the ears of Kitchener's councillor for Ward 3, Jason Deneau.
Not every piece of land is suitable for development. We want development happening in the city, but it has to be in the right location and one that makes sense, especially with the ion going to be coming through at some point in time in the future. There's not a lot you can do with that area that won't increase congestion and pose potential risk for motorists trying to merge onto the 401.
Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the City of Cambridge has found a sponsor for its basketball gyms at the new multiplex. The 3 gyms will become the Elements Engineering Gymnasium under a 5-year deal worth $150,000. Last year, Toyota secured naming rights to the soccer complex Fieldhouse on Fountain Street at a cost of $250,000 over 10 years. Cambridge is hoping to raise $15 million in sponsorships and naming rights to offset the cost of new facilities. Number 4, the Ontario government taking action to prioritize electricity for data centers that support the province's economic interests, including those that create high-quality jobs, assist in domestic data hosting, and strengthen Ontario's position in the digital economy. Energy Minister Stephen Lecce made the announcement yesterday in Kitchener.
This is not a distant issue. It's really happening before our eyes as we speak. Under the current system, the current law, there really is no mechanism to manage this. Utilities are required by law to connect every large data center or large industrial load that applies to the grid without discrimination, regardless of how much energy they consume, how many jobs they create, or whether they support Ontario's broader economic interests and our jobs. That's not really responsible planning. That's not about protecting the province.
The current load, data centers requesting to be connected to Ontario's grid, represents approximately 30% of Ontario's peak demand in 2024. That's roughly the output of a nuclear plant the size of Bruce Power. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the best goalie in the Canadian Hockey League last year has signed an NHL contract with his hometown team. Kitchener Rangers goalie Jackson Parsons signed the 3-year entry-level deal yesterday with the Ottawa Senators. Parsons was named the OHL and CHL goaltender of the year last season after posting 37 wins and 6 shutouts. Parsons was not drafted into the NHL and signs this deal as a free agent. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning. I have a question for you. If somebody were coming to visit our region, where would you tell them to visit? What attraction would you say you must see? Because I came across a little review of the Call of Duty video game championship tournament thingamabob that happened at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium this past weekend. And I'll read from the beginning of this post. When it was announced that the Call of Duty League Championship would be coming to Kitchener for 2025, it prompted many fans to question, where the hell is that? But it went on to say, overall, it turned out to be a pretty good location. And this particular poster said, I hired a car and used the weekend to see the surrounding area. Cool. But to this particular gamer, his definition of surrounding area does not match my definition of surrounding area. I'll tell you where he went, but I would love to know from you. If you were talking to this young man as he's making his preparation to come to Kitchener for the Call of Duty League Championships, where would you tell him to go? What do we have here in the region that you think somebody should see when they visit? Please tell me that, and I'll tell you where this young fella ended up going. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. If I'm coming here for the first time, where should I go? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So I stumbled across this review of the Call of Duty League Championships that took place in Kitchener this past weekend. And it started on an interesting foot. I guess fans were raising eyebrows, wondering where in HE double hockey sticks this Kitchener place is. And then the attendance on the first day of the tournament. Not exactly the best, according to Insider Gaming, where I found this post. But one of the things that really got me thinking was the post went on to describe how this particular participant spent their weekend, including hiring a car used to see the surrounding area. But their definition of surrounding area is much different than mine. I'll tell you where this participant went in just a moment, but it got me thinking, like, where would I tell somebody to go? You know, I love this town. I love this town. But if somebody were coming in from out of town and said, where should I go? Hey, Farwell, when I come to visit your city, what should I do? What would I tell them? So I thought I'd ask you the same thing. If somebody's coming here and says, hey, when I come to your town, where should I go? What should I do? I'd love to know what your recommendation is. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Hey, George, if somebody's coming to your town, what should they do?
Mike, when I was a young, wee lad growing up in beautiful Streetsville, Ontario, when I would dream about Waterloo County, what I would dream up would be like the beautiful Hawksville area, West Montrose, St. Jacobs, Elmira. Those beautiful places just north of Waterloo is what I would dream about. And then, of course, the Grand River running through Cambridge was also a beautiful spot for me.
Fantastic suggestions. I thought of all the same. And you talk about those places just north of Waterloo. That would be the surrounding area, wouldn't it be?
Definitely surrounding area. It's nice and hilly. You got the Mennonites in through there. It's just like being in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's just a beautiful part of the world.
Well done, George. I couldn't agree more. Some of the very first thoughts that I had as well. The Grand River, obviously a great outdoor feature and attraction. I thought of a Mennonite tour, which you can do through the Mennonite Story in St. Jacobs. Fantastic place, museum history, take the tour. Why wouldn't you do that when you come to these here parts? The market jumped out at me for obvious reasons. I know some of us old fogies like me, oh, it's not the same as it was when it was just the stockyards back in the day. It is a tourist place now, and that's fine. The covered bridge in West Montrose, fantastic idea. Maybe you could look at what's going on at the center in the square or take in a show at Drayton. We've got the Hamilton Family Theatre in Cambridge, the St. Jacobs Playhouse in, obviously, St. Jacobs. I think, like, we've got options here, don't we? Mary, where would you tell somebody to go?
I'd tell them to go to New Hamburg.
New Hamburg? What's in New Hamburg?
Oh,
Mountain Oak cheese.
It's the cutest little place. It really is, and you know it.
Of course I know it.
You know it. Castle Kilbride.
Kilbride, so that's Baden, okay.
Yeah. We'll get them all in. But see New Hamburg first from the Highway 7-8 or whatever it is, because it looks like a little German town nestled in the valley.
Yeah, you know what? Good description of it, Mary.
Yes, well, it's getting bigger, but...
It is getting bigger. When I came through there the other weekend, there's a lot happening on my right as I come along the highway there. Some developments going in, yeah.
Yes. But I say the little... Even, each little town has a sweet, quaint thing about it.
Excellent point.
What do you think?
Mary, I agree with you.
Have a good day, Mike.
You too, Mary. Thanks for that. You see, we have suggestions. We have ideas. So let me take you back to Insider Gaming. And according to this post that I read, I'll quote again, it might have cost $150 in Uber charges to get from the airport in Toronto to Kitchener, but was it worth it? I hired a car and used the weekend to see the surrounding area. Now brace yourself, because here's the surrounding area. Heading out for a half-day trip to Niagara Falls. But how is Niagara Falls the surrounding... If Niagara Falls is the surrounding area to Kitchener, we got ourselves some trouble around here. And so that's what made me think. Like, if you're not from here, what do you find when you get here? We certainly don't have one of the seven wonders of the world. I understand that. We don't have a Niagara Falls or a CN Tower, but come on with your coming on here. We've got more to offer. You don't have to do a half-day trip to the, quote, surrounding area of Niagara Falls, 90 bloody minutes away from here. That one just took me aback a little bit. I can't say that Kitchener had any real issues, says Insider Gaming, after the Call of Duty League Championships. It might not have had the popping nightlife that some might be looking for, but it had enough. And a shout out, says Insider Gaming, to John at Range 519 and the folks at Moose Winooski's for going the extra mile. I'm not surprised. But good sir, you did not have to go that many miles to Niagara Falls to enjoy the, quote, surrounding area of Kitchener. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We are going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update in 60 seconds, but let's get back to the phones to hear from Sue. Good morning, Sue.
Good morning. What a great day it is, too.
It is.
Yes, I was around spring breakup, too, and that fella mentioned about West Montrose, and I made it over the bridge with my girlfriend, and we had to maneuver around some of the ice that had merged onto that little road.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I was actually heading to Elora. You didn't mention that.
Oh, that's, you know what? I would call that surrounding area. Sure, yeah.
For the tooth and time. Well, my girlfriend thought it was something to do with the dentist, but I never told her what it was. And the tooth and time is right there by the Elora Inn Mill.
Yeah, sure.
And so it has the shape of a tooth, and so we explored in that area. And I had a person that was also a fisherman friend, and it was really a great place. There's different fishing spots besides, on the rivers to go to fish.
Yeah.
And I think the one last, let's see, there was something else I wanted to say.
Well,
Laura is really great, but the tooth and time, and she was really nicely surprised because then we could go in there. I don't know if the Elora Mill is open or not, but
I think that it is. And Sue, I'm so sorry, but I got to get to the news center because I'm running late. But Elora, I would count as surrounding area. Niagara Falls, not so much. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Well, many of us were enjoying a long Canada Day weekend, taking the Monday as a holiday before the Tuesday holiday arrived. Prime Minister Mark Carney was busy dropping Canada's proposed digital services tax. This as a way of appeasing U.S. President Donald Trump, who called it a blatant attack on U.S. tech companies. And in the wake of that decision by Prime Minister Carney, many have been critical of Canada's leader, saying that his elbows are down and that he caved to pressure from the United States. Julian Karagesian is a lecturer in the Department of Economics at McGill University, also a former special advisor to the Ministry of Finance, and joins us to talk about it. Julian, good morning.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for making the time. Did Prime Minister Carney cave in this regard, in your opinion?
Well, yeah. I mean, on the face of it, he clearly gave in to American pressure from the Trump administration. Now, he was dealt, and our country was dealt, a pretty tough hand of cards because our economic model, we export a third of our GDP. A third of our economy is exports, and 75 to 80% of those go to the United States. So you could say our economic model is in significant part selling a lot of stuff to the giant neighbor next door. And the giant neighbor next door is using our model, has weaponized it against us over the last 6-7 months. So the choice facing the Prime Minister was basically, I can dig my heels in on a tax that we have every right to implement as a sovereign country, or let this one go, get back on the trade negotiations. It was a very, very tough hand. And I think he played it to the last minute. He did what he could with it, I believe, in the sense that he waited to the very last minute. He didn't preemptively take the tax off the table, Prime Minister Carney. He left it on, waited for Trump to react, took it off, knowing that we're going to lose some face, but took it off at the last minute, and it looks like it gives the appearance of a concession. Now, whether that keeps the White House at bay and they don't come back for more concessions, then it's kind of a partial victory. If they do come back for more, then we're facing more tough choices. They could come after our culture, our banking, our dairy support, basically anything. They could come after our critical minerals. So at some point, Mike, I think we do have to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, this is it. This is where we fight. We'll see where that is.
So if we have not yet reached that line in the sand here, and we will willingly drop the digital services tax and the estimated $7 billion that could have been collected from that over the years to come, what is the strategic play then here for Canada to perhaps buffer itself against future attacks when we're ready to draw that line?
In the immediate term, the strategic play is to do not everything we can, but as much as we can to get trade policy clarity from the Trump administration in the form of as rock solid a deal as is possible with the Trump administration on a new trade agreement, on an update of CUSMA, which was a renegotiation of NAFTA. So we don't have a lot of cards in the immediate to short term. However, if the Trump administration comes back and says, remove your supply management, get rid of this, get rid of that, then at some point we will have to, as a sovereign nation, face a tough choice and say, no, we're not going to do that. And we'll have to suffer the consequences, because consequences, I think, will be real, because while the Trump always chickens out trade may be valid vis-a-vis China, he won't chicken out with us because they're 12 times our size economically. So in the immediate to short term, there's not a whole lot of cards we can play. We could dig our heels in. But in the medium to long term, we do have choices, and I think it's urgent in the medium to long term to build out our trading relationships with China, with India, with the rest of the global south, with Europe, and to build out our economy. Kitchener-Waterloo, I think where you're sitting, was a major manufacturing city. It still is. 20% of the jobs there are manufacturing. And we used to build a lot more in Canada than we do today. And so another tough choice we'll have to make is to use some of our scarce fiscal resources to build up our domestic economy. But that won't happen overnight.
So are we really, to coin a phrase here, talking about short-term pain for long-term gain here?
I think so. I think we are, Mike. I think that, and then there's the concerning thing is that we really have very little leeway on this, is if President Trump and his team come back and say, you know what, all those protections you have for your culture, for Canadian news, we want those off. We want to be able to invest and take them over. And, that'll be the big test if they do that, and if they try to force us to take away supports for our farmers. In a country or from a country where there are massive federal government supports in the United States for agriculture, for big business, for oil. It's a bit rich when the Trump administration says, your digital services tax is an assault on our tech sector. And again, outside of the tech sector, they have a range of subsidies and tax breaks for big business. So if they come back and say, remove your protections for banking, dairy, et cetera, we're going to have a tough choice to make. We may have to make that choice in the next few weeks if they come after it and say, you know what? No, this is where we draw the line. Nothing's stopping Trump from asking for privileged American access to our critical minerals, for example. He could make that part of the negotiation. So
where do you see Canada's opportunity here in this new global stage, or on this new global stage?
Well, I see it, and this is going to take just getting over a narrative that was created in Washington about China. I think one of our big opportunities is to trade with China, which is now 1/3 of manufacturing output. They have things we need. We have things they need. It's a perfect trading relationship. And I think we just have to get over some of the tensions that were actually manufactured in Washington. Washington doesn't want us to trade with China or the global south, but they're cutting deals with them. So I think we just have to be sovereign and say it's in our interest to trade with a part of the world East Asia and the global south, where 6 out of every 8 people live, and where most of the growth is coming from.
It's great to get your perspective on the show, Julian. Thanks so much for making time for us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Julian Karageshian is a lecturer in the Department of Economics at McGill University and a former special advisor with the Ministry of Finance. He looks at Prime Minister Carney's capitulation, caving in on the digital service tax as a mini win. And I am not in any way trying to be an apologist for the Prime Minister. However, I feel similarly, and I've got the receipts if you want to go to the conversation we had at the Farwell household over the weekend, because I think, what is it they say in playing cards, which I used to do from time to time, a small win is better than a big loss. This is, I think, in the grand scheme of things, a small loss for Canada. The billions that would have been reaped from this digital services tax for the long-term play of essentially keeping the monster next door at bay as we get these, as we diversify our trade. Perhaps we onshore some manufacturing again, as you heard Julian allude to. We've heard the calls to create, for example, a domestic automotive company, automobile manufacturer, et cetera. I think there's real opportunity here in the long term with our critical minerals, maybe even extracting them and then building the technology right here in Canada, getting our natural resources to market to different trade partners so we're not so heavily reliant on the United States. And I think this small, in the grand scheme of things, loss buys us the time to get our economic house in order in other areas. That's my 2 cents on it, but would love to hear yours. I mean, is this elbows down from Prime Minister Carney? Has he disappointed you in this? Or do you see a more strategic long-term play here? Would love to get your thoughts on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
There's not a whole lot of cards we can play. We could dig our heels in. But in the medium to long term, we do have choices, and I think it's urgent in the medium to long term to build out our trading relationships with China, with India, with the rest of the global south, with Europe, and to build out our economy.
Julian Karageshian is a lecturer in the Department of Economics at McGill University. He says dropping the digital services tax is actually a mini win for Prime Minister Mark Carney. What do you say? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Ben, good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I think the question actually has to be, do Canadians have their elbows up? A bit of preamble. I mean, we had a good faith agreement with the United States to allow American proliferation, of culture, retail, manufacturing. It was an agreement between friendly countries, right, to allow them to take over. I'm sure you remember a time where, we had our own Canadian retail brands and manufacturing. It wasn't always Walmart and Home Depot and McDonald's everywhere, Popeyes, Chick-fil-A, none of that. President Trump, that was a Freudian slip. He is a chump because he doesn't understand this. He thinks in a very black and white sort of way. Our government, they can only do so much. I mean, we can do tariffs, we can do taxes, we talk about protecting Canadian dairy and our banking system, but really it comes down to choice. The market chooses. And so for all the listeners right now who have, let's say, for example, with the digital taxes or the digital tax, if you have, if you're subscribing to Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime, you're part of the problem. Like, it's ironic about, maybe not ironic, but I think people forget that, especially with tariffs. We didn't have to do any counter tariffs or anything. We all just made a choice to stop buying American,
Yeah, Ben, I hear where you're coming from, and I do appreciate the perspective. I don't know that you can unpack all that's been packed into the Americanization of Canadian culture, because there isn't a replacement Canadian version of Netflix, for example, right now. But I do hear where you're coming from, and it makes me think in the bigger picture about the whole elbows up movement, if you want to call it that. It was a pretty short-lived movement. You talk to, and I've been reading some headlines about retailers who had a big boost in sales in May, for example, when we were all elbows up, and then those sales have just, trickled away again because it's pretty easy to click shop on Amazon, for example. But I hear where you're coming from, and I like the perspective. Jersey Bill, good morning.
Good morning. Actually, I see this problem as being even worse than what's happening with Canada, especially now that that bill has passed, and it looks as though that Trump is wanting to follow the same kind of policies that was followed by the Republicans in the 1920s: anti-immigration, high tariffs, political isolationism for the rest of the world. It led to the Great Depression and eventually led to World War II. I hope that Canada can make these agreements with other nations around. If America wants to isolate itself, and I hate saying this as an American, but if Canada can make deals with the Asian economies, with the European economies, with the rest of the economies in the rest of the Americas, that's the way it'll have to go, because America wants to isolate itself, and hopefully this way they'll be proved wrong by this policy, and they will turn away in the next few years. But that's the only hope I think we have.
Billy, I appreciate that perspective through the American lens, and he's obviously not wrong. This is almost a repeat of 100 years ago with this isolationism. And what do we say about those who fail to learn from history, the mistakes of the past? They're doomed to repeat them. I mean, are we seeing a repeat of those same mistakes of a century ago? It's a rather gloomy prospect, but I think one we can at least be observant of now, considering the parallels to 100 years ago. We'll take more calls right after this quick timeout. Are your elbows still up? Did the Prime Minister's elbows go down? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Back to our conversation about Canada dropping the digital services tax. And our guest from the University of Montreal, or pardon me, McGill University in Montreal, says this is a mini win for Canada. There's a long-term strategic play here. Let's go back to the phones. Paul, good morning.
Morning. How you doing?
Good.
Listen, the Carney says how high as he jumps up off of his knees when Trump gives orders. He does whatever Trump tells him to do. And to be quite honest, I think you take this as an example. A U.S. company has a brick-and-mortar store in Canada. They sell products or provide services or whatever, and they're taxed on the money that they make in Canada. But because this is an online thing, the U.S. says, we don't have to pay these taxes. It's only because they don't have a brick-and-mortar store. If they had a brick-and-mortar store, they'd be expected to pay these taxes. Is that not accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so we say, even though you don't have a brick-and-mortar store, you're making profits in Canada, you should be taxed on it. So the concept, I think, is a good thing. Of course, anytime you tax a company, the company just puts that as the cost of doing business and rolls it into the cost of their end product. So, of course, we end up paying for it in the end. But still, the companies that are operating in Canada should be paying taxes in Canada.
So you would not have dropped the digital services tax then?
No, I think, like I say, I believe that it is fair and that it is a good thing. It's just that Trump doesn't like it. So he just tells Carney, pound salt, and you do what I tell you. And Carney does it just like he does every other time.
All right, Paul. I think we could paraphrase that to say that Paul from Preston actually agrees with former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who brought in the digital services tax. But We'll just leave that right there for now. I certainly understand in principle where Paul is coming from. I have to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then let's talk about that by-election for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in Alberta, because this is a super safe seat, right? No chance that Poilievre loses the by-election, right? He's only got about 6-7 more weeks to wait, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, for the by-election in the riding of Battle River Crowfoot in Alberta that should, and I'll emphasize should, get Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the federal Conservative Party, back into the House of Commons as a sitting member. As you know, during the last general election, he lost his seat in Carleton to Bruce Fanjoy, a political newbie who won the riding for the Liberals. And after 20 years of serving that riding, Pierre Poilievre is on the outside looking in until that by-election happens on August the 18th. Peter Wollstonecroft is a retired professor of political science from the University of Waterloo, joins us for a chat. Peter, good morning.
Good morning to you.
What of Damien Currick and all of this, the fellow who won handily in Battle River Crowfoot, and then just months shy of 6 years to collect his pension, he steps aside? I mean, this feels a little unsavory to me.
Or he took one for the team and had the big picture and knows that when the next election happens, which won't be too far away, 2 or 3 years, he'll be the Conservative candidate. It won't be a Pierre Poilievre in that riding. And Currick will win, and he's back in the game, and a lot of people will applaud him.
And surely, I mean, taking one for the team, yes, but there has to be. He's not just doing this out of the goodness of his heart, is he, Peter? Something had to be arranged here.
Well, I listened to a long interview he gave, and I would say he was very convincing. However, stories keep on appearing that he was told this is what he was going to do. So, and as you said, it's an obvious place in a sense for Poilievre to run, because it's the second safest seat for the party in Canada, and this area has had a long history of populistic conservative politics. And there was a conservative MP who crossed the floor in 1979. And ran as a Liberal and was soundly defeated, despite the fact he'd been resoundingly elected in the previous election. They don't like Liberals in that area, and I know that area very well. It's north of Calgary, south of Edmonton, all the way to the Saskatchewan border. Small towns, rural, agricultural. They don't like Liberals. But Pierre Poilievre is going to have a fight because his margin is so high. Last time, the party's margin is 82%. It'd be very unlikely he does that well, and he could live with us in the 70s. In the 60s doesn't look good, and anything less than that is a disaster. And he's got some big problems. He cannot annoy Danielle Smith, so he has to be careful what he has to say. He's going to have to deal with a Republican or a separatist candidate, and that person will want to stir the waters. At the same time, Pierre Poilievre has to come up with a new message, because he can't go on about Canada's broken and I'm going to fix it, because times have changed in a few months, don't you know? Yes, it has changed. And so what's his overall arching message going to be? We will find out.
You touch on something, Peter, that I'm rather intrigued by. And I don't think I'd go so far as to say that the separatist candidate will upset Pierre Poilievre here. But certainly this is a fly in the ointment that perhaps the Conservative Party did not predict would be on the horizon. Well, yes. And I remind you and your audience that it was just in a riding just to the north of Battle River Crowfoot that in 1988 election had a Reform Party candidate who ran fourth. The winner, a Conservative, died right after the election, so a by-election was called, and she won it. And what happens in a by-election is people are the freest they are
to vote the way they want to or where they think their interests are. They don't have to think about the big questions. Who will be the prime minister? Who do I want to be the prime minister? All that kind of stuff. So they can simply say, well, this person I really like, this person I don't like. They just look at the local candidates. So it's a local battle and local interests prevail, and it is a right-wing populistic area. So who knows what's going to happen. Now, I note that there's a poll that shows that the idea of separatism in Manitoba is attracting some attention. I was gobsmacked when I heard that because Manitoba has no history of that. Alberta and Saskatchewan have a history, particularly Alberta. So there's something happening in Western Canada. It was not for the first time. And this area has a long history of having a taste for such things.
You broke down earlier, Peter, Pierre Poilievre will likely not do quite as well as Damien Carrick, but we could live with something, the party could live with something in the 70s and so on down from there. If it's in the 50s in terms of support, it's a disaster. How much of this by-election result will factor into Pierre Poilievre's leadership review?
Well, and that's in Alberta at the meeting of the party in January. It's not the most congenial time to be having a meeting in Alberta, but anyway, and if he doesn't do well, there'll be a lot of pressure. And I should also mention the last polls I saw indicated that Carney and Poilievre were about the same in terms of their favorable, unfavorable numbers. So he's not a beloved figure even in Alberta. And so I think it's going to be, I'm sure he'll win it, and sure in quotation marks, but it's going to be a big fight for him. And he's going to have to be a candidate. See, he was not a candidate in his riding last time. So he wasn't going to all candidates' meetings. He wasn't filling out questionnaires. He wasn't appearing on talk shows. He wasn't doing a lot of grinning and gripping and campaigning and trying to win the support of people. The party, and he took it for granted that he would be reelected. Now he's going to have to establish a presence in Battle River Crowfoot, and that's a great thing about by-elections is you do have these kinds of things happen. And historically in Canada, in the United Kingdom, other places, by-elections sometimes have very surprising results.
I think we will be surprised, if for no other reason than the margin of victory here. As you said, it won't be 83%.
Yeah, and so if it's in the 70s, okay, what do you expect? But it could be stunning, and it will not be a coronation, it won't be a cakewalk, and a lot of people will be saying, well, maybe we have an option. And once they start asking that question, who knows where they're going to go.
Great to talk to you as always, Peter. Thank you for this.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Peter Wollstonecroft is a professor emeritus political science, the University of Waterloo. I am really curious about two things. One that Peter just made me think of, but prior, the whole idea of the separatist candidate and the separatist movement in Alberta. That's a fly in the ointment, pure and simple. I'm very curious as to what kind of impact that candidate will have on the results overall. And then what Peter just got me thinking about is Pierre Poilievre, the candidate, not the party leader who was kind of anticipated just to walk into Carleton again in his previous riding and lost. But how does Pierre Poilievre campaign as a candidate in this August 18th by-election in Battle River Crowfoot? It's going to be very interesting to watch indeed. We'll take a break. When we come back, speaking of interesting to watch, move over Jamal Murray. You know that we have another basketball phenom from our community now headed to the NBA. We're going to talk to his mom after this on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
With the 21st pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the Utah Jazz select Will Riley from Kitchener, Canada, and the University of Illinois.
I keep saying it was a surreal feeling. It was amazing to be able to hear my name called. My family was proud of me. I got to hug my mom. It's what I've dreamed of as a kid.
What he dreamed of is now reality. Will Riley from Preston High School in Cambridge and Grand River Collegiate in Kitchener, now headed to the NBA. And that mom that he hugged, Tracy Riley, joins us to talk more about it. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm just great. How are you doing? That was about 5 days, 6 days, a week ago now, whatever it was.
It's a week.
A week ago. How do you feel a week later?
To be honest with you, I'm exhausted. I'm currently up at my cottage. I'm just trying to chill. This last few months have been just a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, it's been an exciting time, but wow, it really kind of took a toll on my body. So
you're trying
here I am. I'm chilling. I'm still dealing with stuff from up north, but it's been a whirlwind.
You're trying to chill, and the pesky media is calling for another interview. Like, come on my show,
that's
Tracy.
Okay, that's okay. I love support local. I love that. I love it.
Let's talk about that hug that Will said he was able to give you upon hearing his name at the draft. Obviously, you're there. You watched your son grow to this point. What's the moment like when his name gets called?
Relief. It was definitely. Sitting at that table, we got to that arena, I think it was about 4:30. So it was a long night. Just the emotions. You're wondering when he's going to go, if he's going to go, and just hearing that his name being called, it was just such a big relief. But it was exciting, and I can't wait for the next chapter for my son and his continued success. Can't wait.
How did Will? I mean, you were a hockey player in high school, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, but recreationally, like everyone keeps saying. I think they love to hear that in America. We got this Canadian hockey player mom. But I started playing ringette. Ringette is remember back in the day they didn't really have hockey for girls, so I started playing ringette, and then I dabbled in hockey as I got older. Yes.
Was there ever any indication that Will would pick up hockey instead? I mean, how did basketball start for him?
I tried to get him into hockey. He actually was a really good skater. The stick handling was he's a little too gangly for hockey, I think, at 6'9". I think he picked the right sport. I started him off in soccer. I think that's a great sport for kids. He ran a lot. He played a little bit of baseball. He did some football, and he was actually a really good high jumper at one time. He was breaking records when he was in primary school, and I think grade 8, he still had a record. But he had to kind of make that decision to transition to one sport in the times that we are. It's becoming year round, so he kind of had to pick one around age 13, age 14.
Once he did that, Tracy, what did you have to do as a family to ensure that Will got the best opportunity, the chance to play at the highest level, for example?
Well, we both his father and I tried to surround him around good coaching. I mean, we both come from athletic backgrounds. My father was a phys ed teacher. Will's dad, he was a pretty good athlete in his day, and he's also a track and field coach. So, we just kind of found who the best basketball coaches, and we lucked out because we had Will's fundamental years. He was coached by Alex Urosevich, local Kitchener teacher and coach, and his son was the same age as Will. So he took him under his wing for many years, and then Will eventually outgrew the Kitchener area. We went to some Toronto teams and Toronto coaching. He was part of the Canada Basketball Junior Academy. And then we discovered You Play Canada, which the gentleman that owns and runs that program is Dwayne Washington, who has actually helped many boys into the NBA. So most notably, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, the most recent MVP, RJ Barrett, the Nemhart brothers were part of You Play, and Shaden Sharp. So we involved ourselves with Uplay and stuck it out, believed in the program, stayed loyal, and here we are.
Here we are. And, you document all of that, Tracy, and I'm thinking back a year ago when we as a family dropped our daughter off at the University of Ottawa to begin her academic career post-secondary at the age of 18. All of these steps along the way, I mean, I'm sure you were apart from Will. He was in different parts of Ontario, Canada, North America. How difficult was that as a mom, like to let your boy go at such a young age to pursue this dream?
It was tough. COVID had happened, and he probably was ready to go to the States when he was 15, but it was such a tumultuous time during those years. So we kind of held on as long as we could, but when he was going into grade 11, we made the decision as a family that he would go to the States just to get more exposure. So he went to a school called the Phelps School, which was near Philadelphia. And it was a smaller boys' boarding school, but they had a basketball program. And it was in the middle of nowhere. There was like horse farms surrounding it. So I knew that it was a safe area. He would be able to just concentrate on basketball. And we tried to go down as much as we could. And as soon as he went to his first exposure event with that school, I think he ended up getting like 2 or 3 offers for D1 offers right after that. So, and a lot of the scouts were like, who is this kid and where did he come from? So it just kind of began from there.
So what now?
What now?
I know, it's a big one.
He's currently training right now. He's already the next day after the draft. That was the best thing. Right after he was drafted and we were just taking pictures, he's drafted by the Washington Wizards, and there was a team representative, and he came over and congratulated us and said, okay, so we'll be picking you up in the lobby at 8:45 a.m. And we all went to Washington and got to, tour the facilities, meet all the coaching staff and all the trainers, and just get a little feel for Washington. And Will is just staying there. I came home, and he's training currently for the NBA Summer League, which begins next week in Vegas. So I'll be heading there to watch that as well.
It is a fantastic story. The entire community, obviously, so proud of another native son headed to the NBA. And
amazing.
It really is, Tracy. Thank you for taking time away from your chill time that you so richly deserve and joining us on the show this morning. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks, Mike. Enjoy your show. Thank you.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Tracy Riley, Will Riley's mom, from Kitchener to the NBA. Move over, Jamal Murray. You've got some company. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. But what if you could have been arrested? That time you did something illegal, intentionally or not? 60 minutes from now, during the Flipside, we'll have some fun with that question. But right now, to the 570 News Center we go, and then Gary Chalk is here with Living Retired on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio.
Hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah. I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's all right. I'm hooked on a feeling.
Well, that music can tell you just one thing. It is time not for Ooga Chaka, but Gary Chaka. Gary Chalk writes the humor column Living Retired. He brings it to life on our show each and every Thursday morning at this time. And don't forget to check it out online, livingretired.press. While you are there, make sure you sign up for the weekly delivery right to your inbox. I promise you, the chuckle you will get from Gary's column is far better than the chuckling you do, because when you get those memos from the boss, it's like if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And then Gary is much better at that. Hey, Mr. Chalk, good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, Mike with a mic. How are you today? Happy Canada Day.
Hey, you too. Boy, I'll tell you what, I did it up right this year. I don't want to brag too much, but the Canada Day falling on a Tuesday, and I thought, well, is anybody really going to go to work on the Monday to take the day off Tuesday? And then I thought, you know what? I got an extra day. If I take the Friday off, I'm only using 2 quote unquote vacation days, but I'm getting a 5-day break. I think that's how every Canada Day should be. It's like American Thanksgiving.
Well, exactly. This is nuts. I mean, you got to love Canada, right? I mean, we're got a stellar reputation for providing peacekeeping forces throughout the world and all the trouble spots. We send Canadian observers to oversee third world elections in Haiti and things. We get socialized health care in Canada. And we're the only country that can turn July 1st into 5 days off work somehow. What's with that?
Creative accounting, Gary. Creative accounting, just like our federal government.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, some people took, I don't know what that plan you had. It got me all confused. Some had Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Others took Monday and Tuesday away from the office. Those who couldn't figure it out, which was, I swear, 95% of Canadians, they just packed it in and turned the entire thing into a week off and then sandwiched it in between 2 weekends, and they have, 10 or 15 days off.
You know what? That's like my buddy Rob Snow, who does our afternoon show, Gary. He figured that out.
Yeah, I mean, ever wonder why our gross domestic product is so bad? Now we know.
Now we know.
We aren't working. Oh, my gosh. Well, we typically have a Canada Day barbecue. Invite your friends over. It's BYOB, bring your own booze, but it's also BYLC. Know what that is?
Bring your lawn chair.
You're right.
There you go.
Hey, you're more than just a pretty face. Yes, bring your lawn chairs. Everyone brings those. Mike, who was the wise guy who came up with that lawn chair that folds into its own bag and it's got a little shoelace in it? Who made that thing?
That actually was one of my favorite things for about 3 minutes. And then, that was it. First of all, you don't want to put it back in the bag. Second of all, the cup holder wore right out on me, and I put my bottle of beer in there, and it went right down onto the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, speaking about down on the ground, that's where your bum is when you sit in this thing. Your knees are at your chin. And then, you ever wonder why all those trays of fresh fruit and cheese and crackers don't get passed around? Nobody can get out of the darn chair to pass them around. You get a sore back, and so then after you think, well, I got to get out of this thing somehow, and so maybe an hour in, after everybody's arrived, they set up their lawn chair, they've had some beer, they get up and have a game of cornhole. And then they drink another beer, and now they have their nerve up to say, let's play lawn darts.
Because nothing says playing with sharp-pointed objects but people who are slightly tipsy.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, I used to throw the javelin. I can throw a lawn dart. So after they play lawn darts, it's time for another beer. Then what do? They go over to their neighbor's yard to retrieve all the errant lawn darts. You got to have a set available for your kids when they play. And then you have more beer, and now it's finally time for the barbecue. And, anybody who's been throwing darts and drinking beer, lighting a barbecue sounds like a natural progression. And I got to thinking, Mike, it's not unlike the States and their 4th of July. They celebrate much the same way. American families gather for a barbecue. They play some cornhole. They have a friendly bloodbath of lawn darts. The only difference is they drink inexpensive but weaker beer. That's the only difference from here in Canada.
You're not wrong. And yep. I like the inexpensive part, but we become best friends with our American counterparts when we take our beer down to them.
You betcha.
Yes,
you betcha.
Sir.
That's why Trump wants us. He wants beer.
That's right. We want the 51st state because they make better beer.
That's right. The outcome is always the same, whether you're in the States or here in Canada. Canada Day, July 4th. People suffering singed eyebrows, misdirected lawn darts, excessive alcohol consumption. They end up at the hospital emergency department. Oh, there is one other difference I forgot. In the States, they're allowed to buy fireworks. Ooh, sorry, Mike.
Gary, you know you're picking at an open wound here.
Oh my God! And you know what? Now, as many people have a Canada Day barbecue, there are many other Canadians who have a cottage. You had a cottage as grew up with a family cottage, didn't you?
Oh, we certainly did up in Port Elgin.
Yeah. Well, I never really had the cottage life, but anyways, they went to their cottage. These other Canadians, to me, cottage is nothing more than a 7-letter word for work pit.
Such a good point. I talk to my beloved about that all the time. It sounds wonderful. Let's be up on the water. We'll be at the lake. We'll do this. We'll do that. Yeah, we'll mow 2 lawns. We'll repair 2 roofs. We'll patch 2 decks. It goes on and on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And somewhere you manage to fit in some wobbly pops all at the same time.
That's why you take long weekends, Gary.
That's what it is. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, but I did have an experience at a cottage one time where Jan and I went. And well, as we got on the road and we went driving, and we drove all to this couple that we knew to their work pit. But before, we had to spend hours in the traffic jam, bumper to bumper, on the 400. And finally, we got to the cottage, and we discovered that their cottage looked like, well, what was left over after their garage sale back home. So they took it to their cottage. They had a George Foreman cooking grill, a Suzanne Summers Thigh Master, Ron Poupée hair in a can. Their work pit is where they spend all their quality time complaining about black flies the size of decorator pillows.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. But Mike, cottage owners, they get to legally set off fireworks and singe their eyebrows.
Another place we can legally do it. Gary Chalk joins us every Thursday morning at this time for Living Retired. That's the name of the humor column he writes. He brings it to life on the radio with us. And I happen to know that Gary and his wife, Jan, spend time at their friend's cottage recently in one of my favorite places, Pike Bay. We'll get that story as Living Retired continues this Thursday morning on the Mike Farwell Show. Stay with us, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Thursday morning at this time, we're joined by our friend Gary Chalk. He writes a humor column called Living Retired, and he brings it to life on our show. Gary, I know that you have friends who have a cottage up in, I love this place, Pike Bay, up there by Owen Sound, and you got a chance to do some cottaging, did you?
Yeah, we did. We go there every year for a long weekend, and of course, when you're living retired, every weekend's a long weekend.
Rub it in, why don't you?
Yeah, I'll try that. And I have to admit, Mike, their place is not a work pit. It's a really nice cottage. I have to say that because I'm sure they're listening.
And you want to get the invite back again.
I want to make sure we get back again.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh. Anyways, so this one time we went, it was winter time. It's insulated. That's the word I'm looking for, an insulated cottage. And so we went just for a night, and before we left, Jan said, Gary, you pack your clothes. Mike, this is a true story. Full disclosure, we're amongst friends, so I just want you to know, and the listeners, all 47 of them, that this is really something that happened. So Jan said, pack your clothes. So what I did, I tossed a change of clothes. I have an LL Bean weekender bag that I like, and I got my shaving kit, and I put it in there with my clothes, and I was good to go. Full stop. Women don't do overnight bags. They require a full-size suitcase for one night.
It's true. I mean, there's a reason it's called an overnight bag, right? If you're going for one night, that should be all you need, Gary.
You would think so. You don't need to have a full-size suitcase with a gazillion zippers and 4 wheels going in different directions, and it's got a telescoping handle that stretches out about the length of 7 Olympic javelins. And it's just nuts. Anyways, I said, dear, it's one night. If we were planning on spending the weekend, I'd have gone and rented a U-Haul truck with a rear hydraulic low deck. Right? So we packed, and we're on the road, and that's when we did what cottage owners do. You sit in congested traffic on the busy highway. You sit.
It's the best part, isn't it?
It is, and you at least keep thinking, I I cannot wait till we get there. I'm going to open up the cottage, pop a drink, and then swat flies. But anyways, there we are. We're sitting in traffic, and eventually you go from 4-lane highways down to 2-lane highways, and you go through little villages you've never heard, and then you turn eventually off the road, which means, translated, you are on gravel. It's a country road, but it's called gravel road. And now you're wondering, why on earth did I wash the car before I came? And right. And when you drive to a cottage, the directions always include the people who own the cottage. They say, make sure you stop at the country bakery where everybody stops. And, of course, you do. You go to the country bakery where everyone stops. It's the country bakery that only uses the freshest ingredients, mostly high-cholesterol butter. They mix in bags of sugar, and the result is butter tarts at $9 a pop.
Yeah, but they're butter tarts. They're worth gold, Gary.
I know. And also, we bought the butter tarts and a cherry pie because the country bakery where everyone stops, you have to bring a pie to your hostess. So, well, the pie made it, but Jan and I scarfed down the butter tarts on, I think, the second concession road.
There's no shame in that, Gary. There's no shame in that.
Oh, my gosh. And according to the GPS lady in our car, we finally reached our destination where the cottage and said, stop, your vehicle cannot sustain any more stone chips from the gravel road. You're at the cottage. So we pulled in, and dust is settling down, and I suddenly thought, I forgot to bring my change of clothes, my pajamas, my shaving kit, my one-night overnight bag. It was back home.
Gary, you had one bag to remember. You had one job, Gary Chalk.
Oh, you sound like my wife. Anyways, this is when Jan made it abundantly clear. She said, Gary, it wasn't we who made the mistake. It is you that made the mistake. And she even went so far to tell me that I was responsible for packing my suitcase and putting it into the car. Now, that I thought was a little unfair going that far.
That's asking a lot, right? You can pack it, but come on, getting it into the car, too.
How much responsibility does a guy have to go through? So we get to Pike Bay, and we're sitting on the dock looking out over Lake Huron. It's beautiful. And I didn't even think anymore because we were out there. It was early winter, and so we had some gloves and a toque on. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I forgot I didn't bring any overnight stuff. So it turned into a big deal. Mike asked me why it turned into such a big deal.
Gary, why did it turn into such a big deal?
Well, when we finally went to bed, Jan, of course, she had multiple pairs of pajamas because it was a one-night trip. And feeling sorry for me, she had an idea. What an ingenious wife. Jan said, Gary, you can wear a pair of my pajamas. Nobody will ever know.
Oh, dear.
Like I say, full disclosure, we're amongst friends, and I just want to make sure I don't make this stuff up. It's all real. So I thought, my gosh, I'm about to wear a pair of Jan's pajamas, and I'm doing it at a friend's cottage, and our friends are at the cottage. So they always talk about lessons learned. Well, this is what I learned that night. Nothing works better to keep a middle-aged guy like me in bed all night long and not have to go to the bathroom at a friend's cottage is wearing a two-piece floral pattern with lace trim panda tee and leggings set. Oh, my gosh. And Mike, ever since wearing Jan's two-piece floral pattern pajamas with lace trim panda set and leggings, I'm a whole new man, Mike.
I'll bet you are, Gary.
I do. I don't complain about making the bed in the morning. I enjoy arranging the decorator pillows over top our reversible duvet. And I've also taken to drinking wine spritzers. I eat tofu. And it all started because I wore a pair of Jan's two-piece floral pattern pajamas with lace trim panda tee and leggings.
You know, Gary, when you write your memoir, and I know you will, it should be entitled, I Wore Jan's Pajamas.
that's a story just between you and I.
And only, 45 or so listeners.
That's right.
That's right. Gary, it's always a blast. Thanks again for being here.
Take care, Mike. Enjoy your day.
Gary Chalk is our good friend who writes the humor column Living Retired. He brings it to life on our show every Thursday morning at this time. Don't forget to look it up online, livingretired.press. While you're there, you can sign up to have it delivered directly to your inbox, and you will not regret 1 second of that effort. livingretired.press. Gary Chalk joins us with Living Retired on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is the first Thursday of the month of July. And on the first Thursday of every month at 11 o'clock, we're joined by our good friends from the City of Waterloo Museum for a little something we call a Throwback Thursday. There's a rich history in this community, as you well know. If you pay enough attention to those street names, for example, you'll find family names from a bygone era that helped shape this community in so many different ways. So it's a lot of fun to take a little trip down memory lane, look at the history of our community. And this time around, I think you probably know we've got some level of history in spirits, in alcohol. We're going to take a little distillery tour with our Throwback Thursday segment today with the City of Waterloo Museum. That's coming up right after this update from the 570 News Center. Stay with us on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is the first Thursday of July, and on the first Thursday of the month, we dedicate some space for a Throwback Thursday segment, tracing some of our region's history with our good friends from the City of Waterloo Museum. Jennifer Huber, a program and engagement associate at the City of Waterloo Museum, joins us for these little historical perspectives on our community. I love your passion for this, Jen, and I'm so glad to have you back.
Yeah, thank you for having me in the City of Waterloo Museum as we take a step back in time and uncover the fascinating stories of our city.
Well, I know that one of those fascinating stories, and we've touched on it in previous Throwback Thursday segments, is our history in alcohol, both beer and spirits, and Seagram's is very well known. Who would ever forget that pyramid of barrels that was outside at Urban Caroline for so many years?
So iconic, right?
Absolutely iconic. And I guess this is the subject of a summer exhibit you've got open at the City of Waterloo Museum.
It is. We're very excited. So for your listeners, be some of the first to hear, our new exhibit is called A Distiller's Tale, the Art and Legacy of the Seagram's Distillery. So for folks who maybe don't remember exactly where it was, if you're uptown Waterloo, the corner of Caroline and Herb Street, you can still see some buildings that reminisce of their historic past. So we have 2 condo buildings, which were former barrel whiskey warehouses. We have the corner building that's missing the corner, cut right off of the building. It's a story for another day, I'll tell you. But that used to be another barrel warehouse and the former Seagram's Museum. And then where Soleil Restaurant is today, that was part of their whole facility. So it was quite a conglomerate there. And you can imagine it made quite a lasting impact on our community, just how much space it actually took up.
No question. When you think about that, from Soleil all the way over to the barrel yards, that is a pretty big piece of geography we're talking about.
Absolutely. And in our exhibit, we're kind of diving into that story. So if anyone has ever been on a distillery tour, you'll know that they take you through some of that process of how whiskey is made, everything from when the grain comes in to the milling, mashing, fermenting, blending, aging, all of those parts of the process. And what our exhibit is doing is taking a twist and looking really closely at how Seagram's focused on the quality of what they were producing. So what was the little things that they did that made their whiskey so incredibly internationally renowned and known?
So do we have to have been on a distillery tour before to truly appreciate this exhibit?
Not a chance. We've got you covered. We walk you through the process in a very simple manner, but we also take a bit of a twist on it. And we bring out some of the tools of the trade that you wouldn't get to see even on these specific tours. So if you've never seen a whiskey thief, you get to.
Wait a minute. I met a whiskey thief once, but...
Was it you?
No, it wasn't. I promise it was not me. I had it's like the magic glass. At one minute there's whiskey in it. The next minute, I don't know, the whiskey thief came, I suppose.
We must buy our glasses at the same spot. It happens at my house too. But yeah, so you'll get to see a whiskey thief. You'll see a bung flogger. I don't know if you've ever heard of a bung flogger before.
Who, what now?
Yeah, a bung flogger. It's just really fun to say, so I thought I would bring it up in conversation.
So you are flogging the bung.
Correct.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. I mean...
With whiskey, of course, right? Yeah.
Well, okay, but the bung, that's like the stopper that goes in a whiskey barrel, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So there's a hole in a whiskey barrel, and what it allows you to do is take samples out of the barrel to check the whiskey as it ages, and the bung flogger simply has the job of clogging that hole back up with the bung.
I love it. I love it. So that's an important tool in the barrel making process.
Absolutely. And we will be looking at coopering and the skills, because we used to have quite a few cooperages in this area. So we'll be talking a little bit more about some of those kind of pieces. But then we step beyond what I would say a traditional distillery tour has. We look at the bottling process. We look at packaging, marketing, advertising, because all of these things is what really built the Seagram's empire that made so international attention.
So what sorts of local aspects will be featured in this exhibit at the City of Waterloo Museum?
I am so glad you asked, because I mentioned kind of the landscape of the Seagram's distillery, and what we're going to do throughout that exhibit, as I mentioned, the process of whiskey distilling, we're actually going to highlight where in the building those specific aspects happened. So you can apply what we talk about in the distilling process to what happened in our own backyard and by people within our community. Plus, we have some footage from when the distillery was up and running, so you'll be able to see that behind the scenes, and lots of really great photos of people at work, living their daily lives in that little bit of energy and effort that they were putting in that made such a huge impact.
It must be a lot of fun for you, because I mentioned at the outset the passion that you obviously bring to this role. It must be so much fun to put an exhibit like this together.
It really is. It's so neat getting to kind of look at the story and figure out how you're going to share that with the community and bring it to life for them. That's what I've always been passionate about. I think we have so much we can learn from history, but how do we communicate that to everyone around us so that we can all learn from it?
And so when we come through this exhibit at the City of Waterloo Museum, when we exit, we'll have a really strong understanding of not only what a distillery tour might be like, but also the connections to Seagram's and the local history of distilling right here in our community.
Absolutely.
Jennifer Huber is with us. She's a program and engagement associate with the City of Waterloo Museum. Joins us on the first Thursday of every month for a little Throwback Thursday segment. The little history or the distillery tour, part of the exhibit that is opening right next. Is it open as of now?
It is opening July 8th.
July 8th. So Monday it's going to open. Tuesday is going to open. Okay. I got my dates all sorted out. And on Tuesday, you can take in this exhibit at the City of Waterloo Museum. One of the other things that I love is the important role that women played in all of this. And of course, it's not just about adult beverages, family-friendly exhibit at the City of Waterloo Museum. We'll get into that conversation as we continue with a Throwback Thursday this morning on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Joined in studio this morning by Jennifer Huber, who's a program and engagement associate with the City of Waterloo Museum. And when Jen is here, you know it's a Throwback Thursday here on the program. Coming up, opening next Tuesday, the 8th, at the City of Waterloo Museum, the exhibit called A Distiller's Tale, which is the art and legacy of the Seagram Distillery. It's going to be like a little distillery tour. You'll go from grain to glass. You'll learn about the local aspects of it. And something that you made me aware of, Jen, is the important role that women played in this process all those decades ago.
Absolutely. And as a historian, I sometimes find when I'm looking through the archives and the collections, you don't often see a lot of female representation. And in distilleries, you think of it as more of a male-dominated industry. But women were really vital to this process. We see pictures in the 30s of women working on the bottling line. And today, when we think about bottles and glassware, we don't really think about the details that go into it. But these women had to hand glue each and every label onto these bottles. So they were precisely lining them up. Even the bottles that have necks on them, you have to line that up and glue that on by hand. And for some folks, what might be a little bit of a throwback is the VO bottles. Do you remember what used to be around the neck of a VO bottle?
I confess I had forgotten until your note jarred my memory. And then, yes, that little tassel that was on it, the ribbon that was there.
Yes, and in some iconic colors for us as well, the black and gold, which we chatted about a couple months ago. But
absolutely.
From the racing background. But yeah, so you can see those little details were work that women had very early on done in the Seagram's distillery. And because they had that fine dexterity skills, we see them on the lines for years and years to come.
Not to mention the patience. Do you know how much of my patience would be lost, and it doesn't take long, when I'm trying to get the label on just so, no excess glue, it can't be crooked. Forget about it. They had the right people on the job for that, for sure. Okay, I mentioned this is the art and legacy of Seagram. So let's talk about the art aspect and what we will see visually when we go through this exhibit.
Yeah, so we live in such an automated world, right? Everything is done by technology and machinery. And what we're doing is we're looking back to a time when everything was so carefully crafted. It was skillful work. It was handmade, literally, not just by the women putting the bottles or the labels on the bottles that now machines can just kind of slide by and do. But we're really looking at the skills of blending. You know, what were they doing when they were standing there with the barrels and mixing them together, and the talent it takes to nose a whiskey and just know what you're putting into that, whether it's that kind of process or the advertising and marketing that they did. You know, we couldn't just type it into ChatGPT and see what it came out with for you. You had to develop those campaigns. And arguably one of the biggest and most successful alcohol beverages came out of this. It was the very famous Crown Royal. Not sure if you've heard of it.
Might have heard of that one, yeah.
Might have tasted it once.
There might be a bottle at home as we speak.
Well, even if you think back to that bottle and the marketing campaign that went around it, some folks might remember King George VI and his wife, Queen Victoria. They came for a visit in 1939, and that's when they launched Crown Royal. So if you think of the name, Crown Royal, some advertising there. If you can picture the bottle in your head, that shape of a crown, they tied that into it. Even some of the molds and models had little crowns etched into the glass there. And if you remember, what were Crown Royal bottles sold in?
Oh, it was a velvet pouch or something, right?
Yeah. And it was a purple bag.
Yes.
Now, lots of folks still have those floating around. I don't know if you grew up with one. Did you have one around your house?
Well, not until many, many years later. My parents were teetotalers, so there wasn't anything around the house, but my friends' parents had it for sure.
So the bottle bags, we actually kept our marbles in as kids, never really thinking too much about what used to be in it, but
of course,
so many people have repurposed those little bags for so long. And folks might be familiar with the bags, but we actually have one of the sewing machines on display.
Come on.
That the women would have sat at and sewn by hand each and every one of those bags.
You know, now you got me thinking, Jen, like if we hadn't used those bags for our marbles back in the day and we preserved one very, very well, it's got to be worth, well, more than the bag of marbles, the marble holder it was used as when we were kids.
Who knows?
There you go. There you go. Okay, so obviously we're talking about adult beverages here, but I know, and it's funny, when I was away for a few days, I heard Larry Fedoruk talking about this. He was filling in for me, and he mentioned, you know, families always looking for things to do over the summer, and Larry said, your kids will love a museum. They might gripe at the beginning, I don't want to go to a museum, but then they get there and they realize all of a sudden they're immersed in all of this. And despite talking about adult beverages, this is a family-friendly event. Kids are going to love it.
Absolutely. And in some senses, we pretend to put kids to work. We let them be part of the marketing.
They should do something, those freeloaders.
It's about time, eh?
That's right.
But we put them to work as if they're part of the marketing team and the advertising team. And we have some activities where they get to design and shape their own bottles. So creativity that way. We put them to work in the scientific lab. We have a little display set up that looks like it's the 1930s labs with the technology and the equipment that they would have had at that time. And we get the kids involved. They can kind of look into the ingredients and try to help check out what ingredients should be used for the whiskey and maybe what ones we should leave out. So we have that. And we also have this really fun unofficial mascot. It's our newest furry staff member. It's a tortoise shell colored cat that's going to take kids on the tour through the exhibit as they walk through the process. So it's a fun little activity book.
I love it. Okay, so this is going to be fun for the entire family. As I mentioned, it opens next Tuesday, the 8th. What hours, when, for how long will we be able to take in this new exhibit, Jen?
Absolutely. And I will just mention that we're still looking for a name for our cat friend. So if folks have any suggestions, they can email us at museum@waterloo.ca or on Instagram and Facebook, because we need to name our unofficial mascot.
Okay.
And then they can come see him in person. And it will be open Tuesdays to Saturdays from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. So
10 to 4 daily, Tuesday through Saturday at the City of Waterloo Museum. The new exhibit, which is, where did I go to the name of it here? The Art and Legacy of the Seagram Distillery. And the email address again is museum@waterloo.ca.
You got it.
Okay, and that's so we can name the new cat mascot.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see what folks have.
Can we name him Whiskey? Would that be okay? How about Seagram? I'm working on it right now. How about Purple Velvet Bag? Okay, Marbles maybe. Anyway, get your suggestions in. Always fun, Jen. Thanks very much for this.
Yeah, thank you for taking this trip down memory lane with us. Until we're open on the 8th, folks can visit us on our website, see our online exhibits. And until next time, keep the past alive.
City of Waterloo Museum joins us on the first Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. for a Throwback Thursday. Jennifer Huber is a program and engagement associate there. 10 o'clock next Tuesday morning, and then Tuesday through Saturday from 10 until 4, you'll be able to check out this latest exhibit. Take the kids. They won't be disappointed. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. There's a little saying that people who have been in my line of work for any length of time have been known to say every now and again. Everything is show prep. We basically say that so that our families are well aware that at any gathering or at any given time, when they tell a story or something happens to them, it may very well end up as part of the show, because life happens and life can sometimes be funny. So as it happened, I think it was last week, it might have been 2 weeks back, but on a Thursday morning with our good friend Gary Chalk, who joins us every week, Thursdays at 10:30 for the Living Retired humor column. We have some fun and listen to Gary's stories about living retired. He kind of asked in an offhand way if I had ever done anything illegal, intentionally or otherwise. And on the spot, in the moment, you ask the question. As you know on this show, I will always give you the answer. I'll be straight with you. And I did recall that time that I did that thing that was absolutely against the law. And in so doing, at the time, because I was a kid, I'm like, I guess it wasn't really intentional. Like I didn't intentionally break the law. I wasn't thinking about the illegality of what I had done. And so I made reference to a high school teacher of mine who taught me a law class and said, ignorance before the law is no excuse or defense, meaning, hey, just because I didn't know or didn't think I was breaking the law doesn't mean I can't be punished for what I did. Making reference to that high school teacher, solicited a message from one of you who also remembered that high school teacher. When Rob Deutschman joined the show yesterday for his weekly segment, Political R&D, Wednesday mornings at 11:30. Rob reminded me of my misspent youth and that thing that I did that was against the law. He gave me a hard time for it. I hope the statute of limitations has passed. All of this is by way of introduction to everything being show prep. It was an offhand question from Gary Chalk that led me to recall that time I broke the law. And I know I can't be the only one, right? So with the Flipside coming up next, I'll share my story again if you missed it before, and you tell me yours. That time you broke the law, intentionally or otherwise. We'll share the stories on the Flipside next on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. In my defense, Your Honor, Here is me standing up for my own character. I'm calling myself as a character witness. Even before that time, I broke the law to a much greater degree, I guess. When I was in elementary school, so I'm a young lad, okay? And one of my buddies taught me. Remember when there used to be like newspaper boxes around town? You put in your quarter, you get out your newspaper, 35 cents. I don't know if they ever got up to 50 or more. Anyway, there was a newspaper box on our way to school. And one of my buddies showed me a way that the box could be opened without putting the money in. You just basically pulled on the handle until it caught the latch, and then you used your little fist, because I was a little guy, to bang on the top of it, and that would dislodge the latch, and the door would open. You could take a newspaper for free. And I did that one day on the way to school. Elementary school. So I'm not even a teenager yet. And don't worry, it wasn't the Kitchener-Waterloo Record. It was the Toronto Sun. I loved the sports section. So I took the newspaper. And I felt so guilty for the rest of that day that on the next day, on my way to school, I put a quarter in the newspaper box and did not take a paper out. I paid for the paper I stole the day before. True story. True as the day is long. However, for whatever reason, that sensibility, I guess, didn't stick with me. So when Gary Chalk brought it up a few weeks ago, just kind of in passing, hey, Mike, have you ever broken the law intentionally or otherwise? Yes, Your Honor, I have, unintentionally. But I learned from my high school law teacher, Mr. Sitko, that ignorance before the law is no excuse or defense. So I'm guilty as charged. I hope the charge doesn't last 30 plus years later. But when I was in high school in this town, it was a much different town. Smaller, pace of life a little bit slower. And our airport out in Breslau was kind of just an airfield, right? There was no terminal. There was not much. It was just a big open airfield. And my buddies and I used to like to hang out there. One of my buddies was very much a plane enthusiast. We'd hang out by the airport, watch the planes, look at the night sky, just hang out in a quiet spot. And one night, for whatever reason, we decided to get out of our car and go out to the runway and take, looking back, like what a dumb kid. But we took some of the lights off the edge of the runway. You know, it's obviously lit so that planes coming in can see where the edges of the runway are. And like, we didn't take the lights. We took the reflective covers. There were orange and blue off of the lights. The lights stayed, but the reflective covers came with us. So I don't know what that would have looked like for pilots coming in, but there would have been the orange, blue, orange, blue, orange, blue pattern, and then just some bright white lights where we had taken the reflective covers off. And then we went back and got in our car and went home. And I just never thought a thing about it. I can't for the life of me right now remember why we did it. It was just, they were there and we did it. And it wasn't until there was a little blurb in the paper a few days later that they were looking for these vandals at the airport that I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done and why have I done it? Too late then. I was just completely a coward. I didn't fess up to anything until now. I tucked away those little reflectors in some cubbyhole in my bedroom and never thought of them again, but certainly didn't admit to what I had done. And just think, like, we're going back to the days, late 1980s here. There was no surveillance cameras. I was watching every one of our moves out there at the airport back then. Many, many, many years later, we're cleaning out the room, doing something, and these lamps appear, and my parents wonder, what are these? Where did these come from? All those years later, I still didn't admit it. So, Mom, Dad, if you're listening, yeah, I took those from the airport back in the day, and still feel a little bit guilty for it. But at the time, I promise you, as the day is long, I wasn't even thinking about the illegality of what I did. I was a dumb kid, and I did that dumb thing. At least the lights were still on the runway, but the reflective coverings had been removed by me and my friends, and I guess it was something that made a blurb in the newspaper because between the three of us, We took at least 6. I think we all left with one of each color. So I'm not throwing my friends under the bus. They know who they were. I'm not here to incriminate them. So there's the story. And it makes me ask the question. I mean, come on. I'm not the only one, right? At some point along the line, you too broke the law. Either knowingly or unknowingly, you did something illegal. Like maybe you really had to get somewhere fast, so you drove at 140 on the 401 or something. I don't know what you did, but I want to hear the story. You can just call up and call yourself Mike if you don't want to use your real name, or Michelle or whatever. But on the flip side today, the question to you is, what did you do that was illegal? Whether you knew it to be at the time or not, what did you do? 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. I'm sure the charge against me and my friends would be something mischief related. If anybody from regional police is listening, please. It was 35 years ago. I can't possibly be held responsible anymore, right? But if you need me to do some community service out at the airport, fine. We'll do that. But in the meantime, let's get your stories about that time you did something against the law, whether you knew at the time it was against the law or not. Let's go to the phones. Grant, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
You strike me as a law-abiding guy, Grant. What could you possibly have done that was illegal?
Take 2 packages that are single of Twinkies from Nectals.
What, from Nectals?
And
that's a classic old grocery store.
And the manager said, "Do you have anything?" Yeah, I had it behind my back. And I walked out.
Even though the manager asked you if you had anything, you said no, and you walked out with 2 bags of Twinkies.
Yeah, they're only single, like in singles.
Okay, so 2 Twinkies. You stole 2 Twinkies.
Yeah. And then Mom stole one of those knobs from Zellers for your lamp. Yeah, Mom kind of looked around.
Hang on. Your mom stole stuff too, so you learned how to steal from your mother, Grant?
Well, she learned from me.
Oh, Here's Grant's problem in this, okay? Those Twinkies would still be fine in the package. They might, if he had not eaten them, the evidence would still be sitting in Grant's home right now. I bet you they could still bust you for that. These are the Twinkies you took from Nectals way back in the day, because those Twinkies, they never go away. They're always with you. Mark, good morning.
Hi, Mike. I'm putting you in jail, Mike. Jackwagon jail.
Come on, Jackwagon jail?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, fine.
Okay, here's my story, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Back at Schneider's, back when smoking, you could smoke anywhere, right? Cigarettes?
Sure, yeah.
They had a cigarette machine. And if you shook the machine, like you kind of shook it, packages would fall into the container. So I did that.
How many times?
More than once.
Got yourself a few packs of smokes, eh?
And then eventually they took the machine away and they put in a new one, and you couldn't do it anymore.
Because I bet you that you were not the only one that had figured out that game.
Oh, no, I was not. Somebody showed me exactly.
Those smokes are expensive, though, Mark. I mean, come on.
Anyway, Mike, that's my story.
All right, Mark. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. I didn't think that my mischief as a teenager would be enough to end up in Jackwagon jail. But as you know, we have built the Jackwagon jail here on the program. When somebody acts in a Jackwagon-like fashion, you are always welcome to throw them into Jackwagon jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200. Go directly to Jackwagon jail. And there's no early release either. There's no bail and waiting to go back for sentencing. You go right to Jackwagon jail and you stay there until whoever put you in there says you can come out. I didn't think that was a Jackwagon move by me, Mark, but you want me to be in Jackwagon jail, so be it. JB, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
When did you break the law?
When I was 17.
Sounds about the same time I did.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I was doing it under the guise of doing something good and something nice.
Oh, so you're like Robin Hood, eh? That's your story.
I had a friend who was at a party about 10 kilometers from my house, and somebody put something in their drink, and she called me. She was in a panic. My folks were out of town, but our van was in the driveway, and I went and picked her up. I drove under the speed limit on my G1 and picked her up, took her home, made sure she got home safe, and that was it.
Okay, wait a minute. Now, see, because I'm old enough to remember a time that there was no such thing as G1, all this nonsense. So G1, you're not allowed to drive at night? Is that the deal?
G1, you have to drive with an adult or another driver with you that has their full license.
Right. And so nobody was around, but you, to be the chivalrous guy that you are, drove essentially illegally.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to forgive you on that one. I think you get we're going to case dismissed. You did the right thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, JB. I appreciate the call. Sometimes the situation necessitates a little bit of a bending of the law. I mean, JB had a license. It just wasn't the full license that allowed him to be behind the wheel of the vehicle without another licensed adult driver in the vehicle with him. You can't really blame him for that, can you, Your Honor? We're asking you this morning on the flip side about the time you broke the law, whether knowingly or unknowingly. We will not hold anything against you. Whether or not any police officers or judges listening do, I don't know. That's up to them. I guess it depends on the severity of the crime. But I think many of us have been there for some reason, right? When did you break the law? Whether you knew it at the time or not. 519-570-2545. Star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. Tell us your story on the flip side this morning. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We are getting your confessions of a true criminal today on the show. Okay, that might be, if this was 48 Hours or, what was the one with Stone Phillips? Do you remember Stone Phillips? He was a former, I think, quarterback or some, anyway, that's how it works in the United States. You go from athlete to host of some, I don't know, news magazine show on U.S. television, and they make everything sound like it's the worst thing ever. For some reason, though, I remember Stone Phillips, and I can't remember the show that he hosted. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to exaggerate it for effect, but we are asking you, because we don't do that on this show. It's the real straight goods here on the program, right? And we're honest and we're transparent. And we tell our stories about those times that we broke the law, either wittingly or unwittingly, and we want to share with the class today. I took some light shades off of the lights along the runway at Waterloo Wellington Airport. Like, it was just the itty-bitty little thing way back when I was in high school. 519-570-2545. Star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. I don't think anybody's going to hold things against you. Grant stole a couple of Twinkies from Nectals, no less. Boy, if you had done it from Dutch Girl, look out. Mark stole some cigarettes from the vending machine at Schneider's back in the day. JB drove before he was a fully licensed driver, but he had a good reason for it, Your Honor. David sends me a great email to Mike at 570news.com. Once, as a little guy, I took a piece of plastic from a clothing store that resembled a tie clip. It was actually a packaging clip that held dress shirts together. My mom noticed I had it when we got home. Being a weekly church-going mom, she marched me right back to the store and made me confess that I stole it. 62 years later, I remember that day like it was yesterday. Thanks, Mom. David, you did have a good mom. I love that story. Oh, how we remember those lessons, don't we? Brock, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. It's Brock Greenhalgh. I'm going to be filling in for you in a couple of weeks, but after that story about you out of the airport, I don't know, man. That's
You think you're covering for a felon?
Well, listen, it's a fellow felon who's going to do it, because at home I might just have a cupboard full of lovely beer steins that have local establishments printed on the sides of them.
Brock, come on. You know, sometimes if you ask, they'll let you take one.
Yes, but sometimes it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Right?
Totally get it. And that's a great collection. All right, you should bring one every day for the Rogers TV audience to see. No, wait, don't do that, because then the establishments might hunt you down.
Well, or they might see it as a free advertisement.
That also true. Way to keep it local, buddy. Attaboy. Thanks,
right,
Brock.
buddy.
Take care. Brock is going to be filling in the week of the 14th when I'm on a week's holidays. But there you go. A local guy hosting this local show. John, good morning.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Oh, good.
Good.
I must say your segment this morning brought back something that I'd forgotten about from years ago. So I grew up in Toronto. During high school, you know, we're young guys. We got our driver's license. We're out Saturday nights. Stuff normally happened between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning.
Nothing good happens after midnight, Johnny.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what we did, we got this idea in our minds that we were going to go around the neighborhood, and there was a real estate agent called Gibson's Realty. They had these really classy real estate signs. They were like two Roman columns, and then in between the sign was suspended, okay? So they looked really nice. So drove around the neighborhood. We managed to remove 4 of them from properties that were for sale. And we then took those signs and put them on the property of our high school. We put the high school up for sale.
I like this idea, actually.
I did not feel guilty because this, of course, was a Saturday night. I didn't feel guilty because the next morning, Sunday morning, my dad goes out, and, you know, he was rather to the rule of law and played everything by the book. He comes in the door and he starts laughing and says, "You'll never believe what happened." I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Go ahead." He said, "Someone put the school up for sale."
So your dad decided that was a pretty good joke.
He decided it was a pretty good joke. And I ended up telling him that, you know, I ended up telling my folks that it was me and my fellow goofs that I hung around with.
I love it, John. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing it.
No problem, Mike. Have a good day and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much. I will. I promise. Confessions of True Criminals here on the flip side. Phil, what did you do?
Well, I think I'm going to start keeping track of some of these things and phone Crime Stoppers and see if I can make a couple of bucks on it.
Listen here, you retired officer, you. Just settle down.
Well, you got to think like one to catch one, right?
Fair.
So here's the scenario. It's about the mid-'70s. The location is Port Elgin. It was either Ralph's Shopette or the Zehrs store.
Absolutely.
And bought one of those portable styrofoam coolers, the white ones, and loaded it up with the essentials of camping, like bread and bologna and probably Chef Boyardee stuff, put it inside the cooler and put the lid on the cooler and went through the till, and the cashier only charged me for the cooler. Didn't open it up and look.
You got the contents for free, eh?
Yes. So guilty as charged.
I'm sure it was an accident, Phil. I'm sure it was an accident. Yes.
Yes. And the statute of limitations has come and gone.
100% it has. Great story. I love Ralph's up in Port Elgin. It's a little pricey, though. A little pricey for cheapskate like me. This is the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I think we still have at least one criminal who is hoping that the statute of limitations has passed when he tells the story of that time he did the crime, even though he wasn't sure it was a criminal activity when he did it. Rock and Ronnie on the phone. We'll get to his call right after this update from the 570 News Center. And Talkback begins. So tell your tales of the crimes you committed, or let's just have a conversation about something of interest to you in the next 60 minutes with open phone lines here on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night.
Don't talk back.
Each and every day between noon and 1, we turn this radio program, and on Rogers TV Cable 20, into the community water cooler. We hang around the virtual cooler and we have conversations. It can be about the weather. It can be about your favorite sports team. It can be about the issue that we talked about on the show that you didn't get to weigh in on earlier, or an issue that you want the others around the cooler to know more about. Just give us a call during Talkback at 519-570-2545, star 570 by cell, or long distance toll free, 1-800-570-5715. Right to the phones we go. Rockin' Ronnie. Good afternoon, my friend.
Hi, Farzi. How are you?
I'm doing great. Weebs, how are you?
I am good. Weather's good. Everything's great, eh?
Attaboy, sure is.
Blue Jays are good. Rangers are making moves there through the summertime here.
Yeah, they got a goaltender in the import draft yesterday. Look out, some kid from Switzerland. Let's hope he's not Swiss cheese, eh?
Yeah, that's for sure. Earlier you were talking about things you did and you got away with.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. I hope it's not murder, Ronnie.
No,
Okay.
I wouldn't want to do that. Mark Goloff, he phoned before about Snyder's.
Oh, yeah.
And it rang
you know Mark, do you?
Hey, oh, sure I do.
Okay.
Good old Mark.
Yeah.
Anyway, he mentioned it, and I sort of thought to myself, oh, yeah, things I got away with. We used to, the odd time, drop a box or something, and on purpose, kind of, and then that would damage the box. So where would it go? It would go to employees' market. And, of course, it would be a cut-down price from the employee market. And so we'd pick it up there at pretty near, that was around 60% off kind of thing. And away we go. And also, we would damage stuff, and then we might help ourselves in the employees, or not the employees market, the return station. Stuff would go down to what they call the return station. And you could just kind of help yourself with different things, eh?
You got it now. Did you get it at a discount, Ronnie, or you got it for free?
The employees market was a discount.
Okay, yeah.
But of course, sometimes you used to kind of help yourself to a box or something that was damaged before it even went down there.
Gotcha.
You get it?
I get it, Ronnie. I get it.
And so, that's something that we got away with. I don't think I'm the only one. I feel guilty, but not too much.
I get it. Okay, Ronnie. Good to hear from you.
All right, buddy. Good talking to you.
Thanks, my friend. You stay well. You know what, Ronnie? I don't think this one was my fault at all. But that idea of a box, mysteriously being damaged or accidentally being damaged, but accidentally on purpose being damaged, that makes me think of something else I was party to. I don't think you can hang it on me. I'm not even sure I should tell the story. Because I don't want anybody to get in trouble. Oh boy, but this was a good scam while it worked. Let me tell you. I didn't start it though. I didn't. Anyway, maybe later. We'll see if you're old enough and mature enough to handle the story. Francis, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I was going to say my name is Mike, but I knew you would catch on.
I know you too well by now, my friend.
Well, I'll tell you, this is a story that could have killed myself, and I didn't really think much of it. I was working down in Bramley at the time. I and my buddy, and we were driving back home towards Formosa. Well, outside of Bramley, there's a long hill, and I saw, first of all, I have to tell you, it was a 62 Mercury Monterey what I was driving. It was like a big boat.
It would be, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It felt like a boat, too. I'm going down this long hill, and I see spaced out 2-3 cars in front of me, and then 2-3 cars coming the other way. So I thought to myself, if I weave in and out, in and out, in and out, well, I looked at as I was doing that, I was doing 120 mile an hour, which I imagine right now would be close to 200 kilometers. And anyways, the guy sitting beside me, he was as white as it goes. So we get back, and this is a Friday night, and I went to the garage, and I said, I need to have an oil change and a grease job. He put the grease gun on the steering linkage, gave it one shot of grease, and the linkage fell off.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Well, I'll tell you, that's the last time I speeded, and long story short, I got rid of that car shortly after.
You are lucky to be alive, Francis.
I think I must have lost 3 of my guardian angels on that one.
I'll bet you did.
And on that, I'll say God bless.
Thank you, Francis. God bless you as well. All from God's country in Formosa. But Bramley to Formosa, I can understand why you're speeding. That's a whale of a drive. You want to get back home to God's country. Kyle, good afternoon.
I realized that I would be a terrible criminal through all these calls because I always get caught.
Okay, remind me never to go anywhere with you then, because I don't want to get caught.
I'd be that person that would do the stupidest thing. If you're like, really, you could have just not done that. You probably wouldn't have got caught. But yeah, no, I mean, I've gotten speeding tickets, and my first one was I think I still had my G2 at the time, and I was driving. I had my friends that I haven't seen in like 10 years in the car. We were driving on the QEW, and I got nailed in a construction zone, and it was on a I guess not the construction workers were present, but it was like a long weekend or whatever. And I remember I got home, and it was I wasn't scared of getting pulled over. I was scared of seeing my father when I got home. And yeah, so anyways, every time I do something, I get caught. So I just decided it's better just not to be a criminal then. So there you go, Mike.
Smart man, Kyle. Smart man. Thanks for the call. Different kind of story, right? Most of us got away with it. Kyle did not. Talkback continues on the Mike Farwell Show today, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Talkback works best when you get the chance to talk back, so the faster I answer the phones, the better. Right back to the phones. Al, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. It's been a couple of weeks since I phoned in and harassed you.
Yes, sir, it has been. Nice to hear from you, though.
Thank you. And guess what we're going to talk about? Speeding.
Oh, let's hear it.
Bet you those 3 drivers that were caught late last week, 2 at 143 and 1 at 138, would have loved photo radar. They'd still have their car, still have their license, not face a day in court.
You don't think so?
I don't know. Actually, that might be a question for the chief next week. What happens if somebody's caught on photo radar at 143 and an 80? Do they get notified or sent a picture of the plate or whatever?
I mean, you know what? It's a good point, Al, and I'll endeavor to learn more about that. But I would think that just given the amount over the posted speed limit, you would suffer those consequences. But I could be wrong.
Right. The only thing is, they would have to, the person who owns the car say, "Oh, I wasn't driving."
Right.
But and have to stick their wife, for the speeding or whatever. So.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, carry on as if you're normal.
Thank you, Al. I'll do the best that I can. This is as normal as I get. But that's a really interesting point because of the way the photo radar system works. Regardless, 143 in an 80, you definitely belong in jackwagon jail. So no matter what the actual law does to you, the Mike Farwell Show law puts you in jackwagon jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200. We have locked you up and thrown away the key. Mark, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
If we go back to the 1970s, when I was a student working part-time at what was then called Brewers Retail.
Yes, sir.
Now the beer store, obviously. But back then, you remember, there was not much of a choice of beer. You had to buy either a 12-pack or a 24.
Yep.
And so anyway, and the manager of the store was the one. So I was a co-accused. The manager of the store was the one who did the crime. He would accidentally once a week drop a case of beer. And, of course, there'd be 2 or 3 broken bottles. Well, you couldn't sell bottles back then individually. And he would do this just before closing time at night. And then, of course, he would bring up, oh, I dropped this case of beer out the back. There's nothing we can do. We better have a couple of these just so that, we don't waste them.
So you are still claiming to this day, though, to be the co-accused. So all you did, Mark, was enjoy a beer or two for free after work because your manager, quote unquote, accidentally dropped a case.
That's correct.
Okay. You know what? Your story stands up with me. Charges dismissed.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the call. Oh, those are the days. So this always struck me as funny. No, it did, because I mentioned earlier when we had our Throwback Thursday segment with the City of Waterloo Museum and Jen Huber, who was here talking about the new exhibit coming to the City of Waterloo Museum that I think you'll enjoy next week. It's a little history, the art and legacy of Seagram's Distillers here in our region. You'll get a lot of interesting history about it, some of the advertising that was used. It's fun for the whole family and all this. And Jen, of course, reminded us that Crown Royal, as an example, would come in that purple cloth bag. She wondered, did you ever have any of those at home? I said, well, no, because my parents did not drink. There was no alcohol in our house growing up. And yet, this is what strikes me as a little bit funny. My father had a part-time job back in the day at Brewers Retail. So as soon as Mark brings it up, of course I remember Brewers Retail. And it's not funny, though, in the sense that, of course, my father worked his tail off. Like, that man has a work ethic like few others I've ever met before. And so here he is, a newly married man, family man. He's already into his profession as a teacher. And, oh, yeah, he's going to pick up some part-time work at Brewers Retail to help pay some bills. But, Mark talking about that, and then our other call earlier from Ronnie, who worked at Schneider's, and talked about the accidentally, i.e. accidentally on purpose, damaged packages that the people could buy, and then the Schneider's marketplace, the employee marketplace, where they could get a discount. Or sometimes the accidentally on purpose damaged packages wouldn't even make it to the employee store. And it reminded me of a story, like Mark just said, I'm the co-accused here. I don't even think I'm guilty of anything, but Ronnie's story reminded me of my story, and now that Mark brought up Brewers Retail, I think I got to come clean. Just remember, it's somebody's fault. But I didn't insist that this happen. But I'll tell you what did happen, and now that I'm starting to feel guilt about it, that's coming up as Talkback continues here on the Mike Farwell Show. I can't believe the stuff you make me admit. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. My defense in I stole the lamps off of the runway lights at Waterloo Wellington Airport is much flimsier than my defense in this next case. And I was only reminded of this next case when Mark called earlier and told me about Ronnie called and told me about some of the shenanigans on the line at Schneider's when, product would accidentally on purpose get damaged so that the employees could buy it in their own store at a discount. Or sometimes it wouldn't even make it to the store. And that got me thinking about this other thing that I did. When I was a kid and took those lamps off the lights at the airport, I was just dumb. I wasn't even thinking. Just plain old dumb, hands down. In this case, and then Mark called and talked about the Brewers Retail, which of course became our beer store. And my father used to work at Brewers Retail way back in the day. I did not. I was a little young for Brewers Retail itself, but by the time it became a beer store, I, as you know, enjoy the occasional wobbly pop. And so this, nobody should get in trouble for this. So please don't give, let's just call him Good Time Johnny. A friend of mine worked at the beer store. And because I enjoy the occasional wobbly pop, and because I'm also as cheap as the day is long, you know this about me, my go-to beer back in the day, and that just goes to show how far back this was, right? It's way back before the craft beer explosion, and I became a real beer snob. I love me my Block 3 craft beers and so many others that are made around here. But Alexander Keith's was my go-to 2-4. Loved me some Alexander Keith's. And it was about $5 more expensive than some of your other mass-produced domestic brands. But whatever, you got to pay for what you want, and so I would. But my buddy, who worked at the beer store, told me that at one point along the way, they had a new program at the beer store where if the cases are damaged or bottles broken, like Mark's story a moment ago, in transit, because that happens on a big truck, right? Then employees can buy those cases of beer for $1 a bottle. So instead of paying whatever, I think it was upwards of $45 for a case of Keith's back then. If there was, so I said to Johnny, like, dude, like if any broken cases of Alexander Keith's come in, hook me up. I'm more than happy to pay $1 a bottle. So I was able to cash in on one or two of those opportunities. And then the day comes to pass. This is, again, a story as true as the day is long. The exchange happens at the parking lot of the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, because this is buying beer out of the trunk of a car. But I get there, Johnny opens the trunk, and there's a couple of cases of Keith's. I'm like, those cases, they're not damaged. And Johnny rips the handle on one, says they are now. I still, $1 of beer, for $50, I got 2 cases. Is that really my fault, I ask you, or is Good Time Johnny the one to blame? Johnny, I'm sorry I just sank you. That's just a nickname we used. His name was Pete. This is the Mike Farwell Show. Your Talkback Hour continues on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. My buddy Craig sends me an email, Mike at 570news.com. He says, I can't listen to your show today. There are too many bad people. Listen. Easy. Pump the brake. Dial that back about 20% there, young fella. There are people who are honest about the crimes they've committed, and then there's the rest of you. We've all done a little bad stuff from time to time. That makes me very nervous, though, about answering this next call, because I think I know the Nathan on the line, and I know that Nathan has at least some history at the beer store. I think I'm in trouble. Nathan, is it?
You assume so much.
I do assume a lot. But that was a true story, right? You used to get $1 of beer for if the cases were damaged, right?
That was before I started working there. That would have been like 15, 20 years ago.
Okay, at least, but now you know how far back this was, and Good Time, I mean, the guy that helped me cannot get in any trouble for it.
Okay, so Aaron Dirty Laundry here. Here we go. Okay, so I was 16 years old, living in England. And I had a hobby. I was a bit of a loner, being a Canadian, going to school there. I was, kind of an outcast. So I spent a lot of time painting these little lead figurines, these Warhammer miniatures, they're called. Not sure if you heard of them.
I have.
So I got really good at it. And I started selling my miniatures to the Warhammer store. They'd pay me a price, and then they'd jack the price up to resale. Well, I started running out of miniatures and resorted to going to the big toy store, and I dropped some miniatures down inside my backpack and walk out with buying one and walk out with about 10, paint them up, and then sell them to the Warhammer store, and I was making a profit. So I guess it was like a little bit of illegal entrepreneurism. I eventually did get caught, not apprehended, because, kids just ran from the police back then, or the old bill, as they were called. So, yeah, I was never apprehended. So that bad habit stuck with me till I was 17 when I came back to Canada, and I tried stealing something from a Shoppers Drug Mart and was caught, and it was not fun. I do not recommend it. I've never even thought about stealing anything ever again after that. It was, I was glad I wasn't 18. Let's put it that way.
Good point. Good point. Nate Dogg, thanks for the call and the reminder. Okay, sometimes we can be foolish as children, but there are real lessons to be learned here. And don't take stuff that doesn't belong to you. Terry, you're on Talkback. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. It appears that half of your listeners used to work at Schneider's.
Listen, Terry, when you're from these here parts, right? Good old Waterloo County, one of the biggest employers we used to have around here.
Yeah, true enough.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mike, I just want to make a comment on that thing you talked about earlier today about the gamer from out of town that went to Niagara Falls.
Yeah, but he said like stuff in the he rented a car to see the surrounding area, and for him, the surrounding area from Kitchener was Niagara Falls. How is that a thing?
Well, it's funny you say that because growing up in Cambridge, whenever we used to have some relatives in the States, the odd one would come from the old country. Nobody wanted to do anything in Cambridge or the area. They all wanted to go to Toronto, the Science Center.
Sure,
Island,
okay, yeah.
Well, even Niagara Falls. So, I mean, 50 years later, I get it. The region is much bigger, but it's just a lot more buildings, traffic, and roads. So has it really changed that much in terms of scenic attractions? I don't know.
Well, the Grand River's always been here. The covered bridge, the Kissing Bridge in Westmont Rose has always been here. The Farmers Market is celebrating, the St. Jacobs Market celebrating 50 years this year. That's always been here.
Oh, I don't think the farmers. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, the farmers might have been around then, but it wasn't. It wasn't the beast that it is today.
Fair,
but nobody wanted to do anything here. They always wanted to go to the big city. The big city now has exploded. I don't think anybody would want to go there now. But it's interesting you said that. But yeah, that's what came to mind. But anyway, Mike, you have yourself a great day. We'll catch you again.
Thanks, Terry. Look forward to the next time. Appreciate the call. I came across this review at Insider Gaming of the Call of Duty League Championships that were in Kitchener this past weekend. And it started off in a dubious fashion, shall we say, when many in the gaming community were wondering, where the hell is this place called Kitchener? Quoting from the post that I read from Insider Gaming. And then it went on to say that, the tournament turned out to be pretty good and Kitchener was a pretty good host, even though attendance was really bad on the first day. But one of the things that struck me from this young fellow who wrote the post at Insider Gaming was him talking about the $150 Uber fare from Toronto to Kitchener. So you're flying into Toronto, Ubering to Kitchener, I suppose. And then how he decided to check out the surrounding area by renting a car while he was here. And one of the places he went was Niagara Falls. I'm like, well, how is that the surrounding area? So that just really struck me. And I asked at the beginning of the show today, if somebody said to you, I'm coming to town, what should I check out? What would you tell them? Because surely you don't have to go to Niagara Falls. Like, I recognize we don't have one of the 7 wonders of the world here in the region of Waterloo, but surely a nice Mennonite tour from the Mennonite Story, or the Kissing Bridge, or a show at Drayton, or, I mean, come on, there's Castle Kilbride came up earlier today. Lots of things to do here that don't involve going to Niagara Falls to entertain yourself. But anyway, I thought it was interesting and a good reminder of, as much as we love where we live, maybe for others, not much going on around here. Thanks to Jim for the email, too, to Mike at 570news.com. Doing 140 in an 80 and getting caught by photo radar will not result in a license suspension because photo radar puts the onus on whomever the license plate is registered to, not necessarily the driver of that vehicle. So as Al called earlier, you're right, little loophole in there for the real maniacs out there that we still need photo radar to stop. Because if you're doing 140 in an 80, you're going to jackwagon jail. This is the Mike Farwell Show. Talkback Hour continues on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Right back to the phones we go on Talkback to say good afternoon to Doug. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Not bad. Hey, my story goes back 52 years. I went into a local AMT, and, with 6 kids in the family, we never got the good pens for school. So I would go into AMP, get some good pens, and then I'd get some to resell. Well, as it turned out, one day I got busted. I had a pack of pens stuck in the sleeve of my coat. They found out about it, called the cops, and the cops drove me home back in them days. But what they didn't know is I had about another 8 to 10 packets in my other sleeve. So I knew if I got home, they were going to discover I had them. So I stuck them under the seat of the cop car. So they never came back to me about it. So maybe they needed some good pens too.
Maybe they did, to fill out all those tickets they were handing out or something.
Oh, sure.
Thanks for the call, Doug. Appreciate it. All right. 52 years ago, you wanted the good pens for school. I get it. You bought one pack and took another one or two to resell. Interesting way of doing it. Joe, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. How's it going there?
Oh, it's going real well. How's it going for you?
If I was any better, there would be 2 of me.
Attaboy.
Yeah. So watching the Schizophrenic Jays, trying to figure this out, they go from, unwatchable to,
First place. First
Yeah.
place. Yes, sir.
Do they have a sports psychologist on call right now?
It reminds me of In the Natural. Winning or losing is a disease. You remember that guy? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, giving up 9 runs a game, do you think that's sustainable?
No.
I don't know if that's sustainable. But, hey, if they can keep scoring 11, then what the hell, right?
Exactly. I was just going to say the same thing. You can let in 9 if you're scoring 11. Go ahead.
Right on. You have a good one.
Thanks, Joe. You too. Appreciate it. In case you didn't know, we follow the Blue Jays closely here on the radio station. Not only are we your local home for Blue Jays baseball on the radio, and listen, even as a guy who A, loves hockey and B, broadcasts hockey, is there any sport that lends itself better to a radio broadcast than baseball? The answer, of course, is no. So you can enjoy listening to the games on 570 News Radio, and on every Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock, the Blue Jay Hunter, the one and only Blue Jay Hunter, joins us here on the show to talk Blue Jays baseball. And when Blue Jay Hunter was here yesterday talking about that very thing, how did this team go from virtually unwatchable, and we were talking about what we would get in return for the Blue Jays' biggest assets. Now they're looking at adding as the trade deadline approaches at the end of the month, and it goes on from there. It's been impressive, and they're just getting it together. Addison Barger having a career year. Ernie Clements playing very well. They're getting it done without Anthony Santander. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. Go Blue Jays, go. Back to the phones. Greg, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. I'm a bit late to the party again, but I guess, confessions from your younger days is what
well, yeah, when you did something illegal, whether you knew it was illegal or not.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hold off on that for now because I can comment on the beer store thing. I had worked part-time there for 12 years.
Okay.
And I was there during the employee purchase ones.
Okay.
And it was short-lived. Thanks to guys like your buddy Johnny or whatever you're calling him, because it got abused. Therefore, okay,
shocking. You offer people $1 a beer and they took advantage of it, eh?
Yeah. Because at any given point, I think each brewery would pick up their own damages after each weekly delivery. They'd take any damages back, so there was always something back there. It was good. You could mix and match. Hey, I'm going to try a couple Rickard's Red. I'm going to try this. You can make your own variety pack up and. For $1 a beer was a good way to do that. But then, misused, therefore done. So that's how that worked. And just sort of on a similar note, back when Brick Brewery first opened.
Oh, yeah.
I worked part-time on their bottling line 2 months after it, and there was no bottle washer. There was not much at all. So therefore, every bottle that came out, they only had enough capacity to bottle maybe twice a week for a couple hours, and then that was it. But then you had to just eyeball. It's too much in that bottle. Well, not enough.
So all these rejects, and there was no such thing as recycling or doing anything. So it's like, okay, here's our lunch. And then in the lunchroom went the rejects, and yeah, quite a few in my day before they finally got a bit more modernized and, put something to it. But yeah, so that was all legit at the time. But it's like, okay, well, there's no way, that bottle's half full. The beer's fine.
Oh, I lost you there. Okay, got you, Greg. Thank you. Yeah, Greg's fading in and out. That reminds me of a guy I worked with. Oh my gosh, this goes back almost 30 years now. And he had come to our place of work from Molson's. He worked at head office there on just off the 401. And it was never about the beer. It was always called the product for starters. But Greg's talking about, enjoying a beverage or two with lunch. There was the product, let's say, was available at no charge to employees at any time. There were taps set up or a fridge full in the lunchroom, et cetera, et cetera. And as you can imagine, it did get abused. And then, of course, as we modernize and we learn more, the company realized, we are situated right by North America's busiest highway. Most people are driving to come to work. Perhaps providing them alcohol is not the best course of action. And that was the end of that as well. Talkback continues on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. One of the things we talked about on the show today was Prime Minister Carney's decision to ditch the digital services tax to keep happy U.S. President Donald Trump. It's the subject of some interesting editorials on the letters to the editor page of today's Globe and Mail, a couple of them from local folks. This one, though, from Halifax caught my eye. All I can think of to do is tax those big American companies myself by boycotting them. I'm canceling my Amazon membership, foregoing Prime, using local taxi companies instead of Uber. I urge all Canadians to consider hitting back at those American transnationals that won't even pay a paltry 3% in taxes to the Canadians who pay them billions. Mr. Carney may have caved, but the rest of us don't have to. I love the sentiment. I just don't know how long it's going to last. And how about Susan from Guelph, who says, we've just watched the spectacle of tech oligarch Jeff Bezos essentially buying Venice for his multi-million-dollar wedding extravaganza. But we don't have the stomach to insist that he pay a 3% tax on the business he does in Canada. Those tax dollars are needed to finance all kinds of public infrastructure and services that support Amazon's success. Mr. Bezos and his tech bros need to pay their fair share. What happened to the promise of elbows up, standing our ground and defending our values? Susan from Guelph. And Peter Wollstonecroft, who was on the show today talking about the by-election in Alberta for Pierre Poilievre. But Peter writes in today's Globe and Mail, for those who say Canada caved to President Trump when the digital services tax was canceled, I remind them that we were not obliterated. I think, to paraphrase, we will live to fight another day. You and I will live to talk another day. I look forward to that day. Tomorrow, our Friday show, we'll make sure we mix in a little bit of fun, including our not $1 million question to begin the show just after 9 tomorrow morning. And then among the conversations we are going to be having, getting light rail transit to Cambridge. The momentum is picking up around the advocacy for Phase 2 of light rail. I know it's a $4.5 billion proposal, but more and more people are now rallying behind it, including a local politician who I think it's an interesting local politician to throw his hat into this ring. So we'll hear from him on the show tomorrow. Also, as you know, we just went through another fireworks-related holiday, and there were fireworks-related shenanigans in the city of Kitchener. The mayor is out with some strong language, and I am personally wondering if we're not headed towards a little bit of a St. Paddy's Day Waterloo type thing in Kitchener and Victoria Park when it comes to fireworks. I mean, how many more times do we see this happen before we decide it is indeed a trend. So we'll talk about that on the show tomorrow. And the city of Guelph and the Guelph Storm OHL Club putting in a bid for the 2027 Memorial Cup. But wait a minute. Just wait a ding-dang minute here. I thought that was ours. I thought Kitchener and the Kitchener Rangers were going to have that bid for the 2027 Memorial Cup. Could Kitchener be up against Guelph competing with the Royal City for the right to host the Junior Hockey Championship in 2027? We'll talk about that on the show tomorrow, our Friday 4 roundtable, and a whole lot more. Hope you'll join me tomorrow morning at 9 when we come right back here and start all over again. Now you know with Rob Snow is coming up. I'm Mike Farwell. Bye for now.